can get my computer started anyways. We can start with our round robin, just to have everyone give updates on what they're working on and how things are going this summer. If you need help with anything or want to collaborate with the group and want to throw something out, or if you have any upcoming events that you want to tell us about. And we're gonna try to keep them a little shorter today, like hopefully end at 11:20, so that we have time for our two speakers who are gonna share today. So I can just call out some folks on Zoom. I see Kelly. Do you want to give us an update on how things are going?
Things are going well. Things have been busy. We're primarily finishing up the Western project for Adriana and team, including Jason. And we're also working on obtaining some NTMPs that one has been resubmitted and accepted, and another one is in process of being resubmitted for acceptance. We're keeping our fingers crossed that those happen. Those are huge documents that take a long time to write. Sometimes they're driven by clients because they need to harvest, and sometimes they're driven by clients who want a long-term strategy for forest health. So we're, it just depends on what their strategy is for managing their property, but it's all good because anytime we do some of this work, we're doing fuel reduction. So we've been heavily in the fuel reduction mode. We're also assisting several landowners up in the Sea Ranch area with hazard trees. So we're running back and forth up there, taking a look at things and getting some of their trees that are dead, dying, or beetle infested removed. And we're heavily working on the Ore Springs Road Fuels Reduction Project. We've done a sample mark up there, and we'll be working with all the homeowners and landowners in the area, as well as the county, to give them a safer egress and ingress. And hopefully that will happen in the next, we'll finish our portion of the project by October, but the implementation will happen in about 2 years, it sounds like, if they can't get funding sooner. So that's about it in a nutshell for ERS. Everybody's busy, and that's good.
Thank you, Kelly. I'll bounce that around between online and versus who's in the room. Could you introduce yourself, please?
Yes. I'm Mim Allison. I'm a landowner. I'm around the coast on Irisville Road. And we have been
That's your computer. Sorry, you'll need to go on silent. Turn off the audio on your computer. I think that's why we're hearing noise. No worries.
We've been working on various substantial defensible space projects for 8 or 10 years. But even though we've been working on this for so long, we decided to hire a fire mitigation specialist in May and had an assessment of our property, both for defensible space as well as our home hardening. And we decided to engage these services, not because we didn't think we knew what we were doing, but we wanted to have some peace of mind that in fact what we had done was effective or likely to be effective, and to help us prioritize our projects for going forward. And it turned out to be a well worth a project.
Fantastic.
I'm also on the Central Sonoma Coast Firewise Committee, which covers the starting north of Timber Cove and comes down to my property on the south end. And we are right now in the process of starting our planning effort for activities we'd like to conduct for the 2026 year. And I would be happy to have suggestions from all of this group. If any of you have some suggestions for us of things that we could do to help communicate and have workshops and other ways to communicate with our community to help people get going on defensible space and home hardening. So on.
Nice. Good. Thank you. Excuse me, folks. Oh my goodness. All right, let's go to on the line. Thank you for that. And Lynn, do you want to give a report out?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
So up in the Upper Mark West watershed, I think the last time I spoke with you, we might have already finished this, but we did update our community wildfire protection plan, which gave us a whole new updated list of priorities from the community of things they want to see happen. And we're starting to work through those and plan some of those workshops and projects. We've spent a considerable amount of energy recently trying to really solidify our road captain groups. That's how we communicate with the people that live up here, since we don't really see each other that well or that often. So the road captains are coming together as our system of how we communicate between the Firewise community and the excuse me, residents up here. We have a Measure H proposal that we've kind of submitted in its first format, that I guess we will be submitting in a more standardized format when that becomes available. But that's for shaded fuel breaks on private roads in the area. We've been really lucky to get our public roads worked on, but we have a number of one-way in, one-way out private roads with a lot of residents that need support, and Measure H seems to be available to do that. California North Bay Conservation. I'm having trouble. I had a wonderful vacation, you guys. I just got back from the coast of Brittany. I'm tan, I'm relaxed, but I can't keep all the acronyms in my head today. Conservation Corps North Bay is working on St. Helena Road. It's moving along. They're about maybe halfway done with that project, shaded fuel break project. And other than that, individuals are doing their work up here. I think we will have some North Bay FIP applications coming in from the watershed. And we are enjoying the morning fog and the warm afternoons, and it's just gorgeous.
Thank you, Lynn, for sharing. Welcome back. Ben, do you want to give a quick introduction if you're going?
As far as what's going on,
Well, yes, anything important? Well, we know you're going to be presenting in more detail, but priorities.
so Ben Nichols, Cal Fire, Sonoma Lake, Napa, West Division Operations. Here today to share some information about fire season moving forward, but on our side, helping some folks through the final hurdles on the upcoming wildfire prevention grants that close out August 6th. So working with Amy and others on getting those across the finish line, because if you win, we win. And so looking to continue those conversations as we come into the short stretch of the grant process.
Nice, thank you. Online, how about Jill Butler, please?
Good morning, Jill Butler, representing Wallala River Watershed Council. The two main things we're working on, we're starting to update our website. And a lot of folks were involved with the one for the forest group. so you know that that'll be a long, drawn out process. Excuse me. The other thing is trying to coordinate with water quality on the rollout of the total maximum daily load program for the Wallala River. So that is now in full-blown rollout mode, and water quality is having public comment periods and some meetings and workshops going on in regards to the formal stuff is they have an action plan, and they will have a road permit program. And at this point, the folks that will be affected out there are the larger landowners that own over 1,000 acres, which we think is 15 or 20 landowners. And the council will have some involvement with some of the meetings, and we're also trying to coordinate doing a field trip for water quality with people that are willing to provide them access for a field trip. So that's what's going on with us.
All right, thank you, Jill. Patty, or no, sorry, Jason next.
Yeah, what's up, you guys? It's been a while. It's really nice to be here. We've been super busy. Ecological Solutions is coming up on year 2. And we treated about 60 acres thinned and shaded fuel breaks with the ecological approach for like public and private land. So that was really great. We were able to burn about 100 piles for HOA in the heart of Santa Rosa. So that was a real nice one to get that done. Heading into fire season. And now we're helping out with some North Bay Forest Improvement Program scopes of work with the grant deadline approaching. And hoping to help assist on those projects. And then we have also been doing some defensible space work around homes, some in partnership with Fire Safe Sonoma and other just homeowners reaching out. And then we've been working with Sonoma RCD, doing post-fire invasive plant control, and just wrapped up a bunch of star thistle and barb goatgrass work. And then we're keeping our trees alive there on Little Wohler Bridge with Sonoma Infrastructure. As it starts to get cooking, they need water, so we've been out there irrigating and weeding around our plants. And then we had an interesting one. We did a green roof meadow for a homeowner out there in the Jenner Headland. So that was an exciting one to put some habitat on a rooftop there. It's coming along really nice. And then we got to partner up with Kim and the RCD for this workforce development event a few weeks back. And that was a total victory, just a great day. So I'm really happy to have all the partners to support that project. And yeah, things have been busy and good. So thanks so much.
All right, thank you, Jason. Fred Ufrat, you are next.
I am unmuted.
Yes, you are good.
I have feedback from your room, but we'll work with that. Hey everybody, Fred Ufrat, RCD board, and happy to be here. So let's see. I've got RPF projects doing NB-FIP, and we're stretching all the way from Upper Freestone all the way to Bittner Road at this point, with about a dozen landowners. And that's several projects with NB-FIP and also with EQIP, and that's really exciting. Also, we had that fabulous teach-in, if you will, fill your form day out with Coast Ridge, and we had 4 foresters and RCD, and it was great, and got about 20 plans in for NB-FIP that day. Thank you, Rose. Thank you, Adriana. Thank you, everyone involved. And just planning stuff for the Healdsburg area, more thinning, more burning, more chopping, more planting, and on we go. Great to see you all.
All right, thank you, Fred. Let's go to Patty.
Good morning, I'm Patty Aaron. I'm with the Sonoma RCD. I'm a community engagement specialist. Primarily, we're working on assisting people with the NB-FIP and doing the outreach on that. Ma'am, I'm in touch with Chris, and I am just starting to put together our workshops for the coming months. So I'll work with you and Chris and help out.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Genevieve, is there anything else going on?
Let me think. We are now under contract with the Water Board to assist with their work up in Guala River watershed. Primarily, we'll be doing road assessments, and I think that's about it. Thank you, Patty.
Thank you.
I like that transition. Let's go to Eric Hughes, please.
Hello all, nice to see you. Eric Schuss, still do project management with Sonoma Ecology Center, and then I've been doing a lot of work with home hardening, defensible space, and vegetation management with my company Ecos Land Services. With the Ecology Center, we've been focused on the second iteration of our fire resilient landscaping course, which the first and second iterations, these are working with La Luz and the JC, Santa Rosa Junior College, and they're all in Spanish. So that's been a lot of fun. Unfortunately, aligned with that, missed the event a few weeks back. I had my first canceled flight ever, which I know everyone complains about, but that was a bummer. And then on the business front, just a lot of people thinking about fire season, wanting to protect their homes, wanting to have, as I believe maybe it was Jill speaking to or someone else saying, it's really about peace of mind. So a lot of people reaching out and just trying to have those conversations and put a lot of education out into the community. So really enjoying that.
Nice, thank you, Eric. How about you, Christopher?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Christopher Sage. I'm from Occidental. I'm a landowner there. I have a conservation easement and working on year 4 of my NRCS Forestry Management Grant, bringing in circuit riders in the next couple of weeks for year 4. Adriana, can you believe that?
Wow.
We're still working on it, but we're wrapping up that grant this summer, so that's great. Separate from that, working with Amy on the steering committee of Bohemia Collaborative West County. I see Amy's on the call, so I'll let her debrief on some of our activities there. Working with a core group of Bodega Land Trust and the Tannery Creek Reserve, trying to find resources for a stewardship plan and working on the social engagement side, which Patty knows about. So,
All right, thank you, Christopher. How about Brooke Edwards, please?
Good morning, everyone. Brooke Edwards, Sonoma County Regional Parks. And yeah, we've had a busy season so far. We put in a couple good prescribed burns, partnering with CAL FIRE, Audubon Canyon Ranch, Sonoma Land Trust. We were able to burn about 14 acres of our Bouverie Wildfire Preserve, which is in the Sonoma Valley area, right next to Audubon's Bouverie Preserve. We did about 12 acres over at Shiloh. So that's right on the frontage near the parking lot. So if you want to take a quick visit out there, you can just park in that parking lot and take a look at some of the fire effects. But we got about 12 acres in there. Recently, you might have heard that 1,500 acres was transferred over to regional parks for our Monorio Redwoods expansion project. And so we are looking at starting to do fuel reduction work on that property this fall. There's about 3 miles of Ridgeline Road that is the old Monorio fire break. It is also a potential operational delineation. So we're going to focus our early efforts on putting in a shaded fuel break along those 3 miles of roads and partnering with CAL FIRE this fall to get some crews up there from Hood Mountain to start to do that fuel reduction work. And then also for the Santa Rosa JC, the Wildfire Resilience Program, which was an internship program that basically gives instructions to students on how to do fuel reduction work. They work out in Shone Farm Forest, working with chainsaws and pole saws, building piles, doing broadcast burns. That is up and running this fall, 2025, and we have about 20 students in that program. And this is a program that we plan to keep on going. And in the spring, we'll probably have 30 students. We'll have a beginning class and an advanced class. So getting that internship program back online and functioning again. So that's news from the JC and regional parks.
Fantastic, thank you, Brooke. Adriana, would you like to report out?
Sure. Adriana Stagnero, Forestry Project Manager with Goldridge RCD. I think we've been very occupied with standing up North Bay Forest Improvement Program. We have quickly opened or revived that program that was paused for a few years. We're currently accepting applications now through July 25th. And as Patty said, we're helping people apply. We're here to help in case you're interested in putting in an application. And let's see, I've been recently, this will be of interest to Amy and Christopher. I've been meeting with a few of the camps and larger landowners in the Bohemia area, just kind of checking in with them, seeing about their interest in applying to NBFIP and partnering with Conservation Corps North Bay, who has been working kind of on
I don't know, individual basis with some landowners out there to get work done. Westminster Woods is doing a roadside shaded fuel break with Conservation Corps North Bay that on a road that goes up to a ridge top. So that's a really nice project that we're helping them get done by being their CEQA lead. And we're just kind of looking at what else we can get done in the near term, sort of patchworking together different funding sources. So that's that, and I think I'll just end there.
That sounds good, thank you.
Which ridge top fuel rate?
Oh, well, Westminster Woods, they have a road, interior road called Ridge Road, and it goes up to the high point, the same ranch that connects with Monterey. I don't know if that road is not connected, but it's in the same neighborhood. But yeah, we could look that on a map later.
Adriana, can I ask the CEQA lead? So is that staff within Gold Ridge RCD that's helping to get CEQA done?
Yeah, so we're a public agency and we can act as the lead agency for CEQA. So Conservation Corps North Bay is not a public agency, they're a nonprofit, so they need to work with a public agency to satisfy CEQA. So we're kind of overseeing the project, making sure everything's compliant, so they can use those public funds.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, Adriana.
Sure.
Bryn Miller, please.
Hey, good morning, everybody. My name is Bryn Miller. I'm an environmental planner at Sonoma Ecology Center. On top of Eric's updates, we have a few restoration projects in progress, including one started last month, doing some fuels reduction work at Calabasas Creek. On the grant side of things, some exciting news on our end. We had a CAL FIRE urban forestry grant for schoolyard greening through the IRA that had been on hold for a long time, and it was just released earlier this week. We don't really understand how it happened, but really happy it did. So hopefully that's a good data point for anyone else who might be waiting on some of your federal items. And on my end, on the grants and planning side, I've been mostly focused on grant applications to WCB and the Coastal Conservancy, including a multi-agency proposal for some gully stuffing and BDA work across eastern Sonoma County. So looking forward to advancing that over the next few weeks and excited to move that forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Bryn. And then Amy, Bellhards.
Hey, everybody, good to see you. Let me get my video on.
Yes.
Yeah, hi. So I'm gonna blur my background because I got a lot going on behind me. Anyway, I've got lots to update you on, lots of things going on in Safer West County and the Bohemian Collaborative. And we're currently in our last year of a CAL FIRE grant in Safer West County that offers rebates for defensible space and free chipping in the Monterey, Forestville, Campmaker, and Occidental areas, and that's been going really well. It's actually taken us a lot longer to get momentum, but we are now getting a lot of momentum, and so we're now trying to have enough assessors in place to go out, assess somebody's project, and then give them the go-ahead to do the work. But that's been a really good community engagement project. And as Christopher talked about, the Bohemian Collaborative is pretty active. The work that we keep getting done, it just continues to grow. Like Fred's working on that MB-FIP for the southern area of the Bohemian Collaborative, which I don't know if all of you know, but it's about 20,000 acres of various large property owners that have come together to try to both learn about what needs to be done as well as act together instead of individually. And it's been a pretty exciting project over the last 5 or 6 years as it's grown. And within that, we've just recently raised some more money because we're always looking for some technical support in that group to help us provide grants. We're in the midst of a stewardship plan with the RCD, which has been an amazing help to work together on that for this entire group. And that's meant to be like a forestry plan, but this group is really focused on stewardship, not just forestry. So we're looking at waterway conservation, land health, as well as the forest health. We applied and did not get a grant with the RCD on a CAL FIRE Forest Health grant, but it was really inspiring to see the number of members of the collaborative that came together, and they're still working on other iterations of that project. And one of those, Ben, you'll be glad to know, I think I finally unlocked the key on the circling of Camp Maker. And so I'll be sharing that with you later. But we think we've found enough roads to get around Camp Maker to do a shaded fuel break, which would be super exciting to help protect that community as well as protect the surrounding area from that community because it has a lot of fire risk within it as well. And we're working with the Resilient Landscape Coalition on a number of things. We've been doing defensible space workshops with them, which have been super successful. And I highly recommend any communities that haven't done their workshops to talk to them about it because those have been really good. And we have a new one that we're working on, which is very fun, which we're going to actually be training landscape designers and landscapers on resilient fire designing landscapes that will meet the new defensible space codes so that they can then take it out to their community. And that one is going to actually be a contest for designing a new landscaping around the Occidental Community Center, which had horrible old, very old and in bad shape rosemary plants right up against the building. So the community has been doing volunteer work to pull the old stuff out. Then we're going to do a workshop and then have these landscape designers actually compete for the design of the new one. And then we'll have signage around the building about defensible space and why this, different things were chosen the way they are so that people can learn about it, not just when it happens, but forever when they visit the community center. And we're really hoping for Measure H funds on roads because West County is full of roads, as Lynn, you spoke of, and all of us have this problem, but we just are full of roads that need some defensible space along the roadside so that in an evacuation you don't have fire coming up right against the road. So I'm hopeful that Measure H will do a lot of work in that. I think that's it. I probably missed a few things.
Well, thank you, Amy. Appreciate that. And then, Rose, would you like to report out on anything?
See, I feel like Adriana probably covered the IFCD and I'm good about that.
Sounds good. Well, thank you. And then Sloan, I think you're our last person to report out. And maybe she's still on. There you go.
Hi everyone, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, hi, yeah, good to see you all. No big updates from me over here at NRCS. We're still accepting applications for our fiscal year 2026 programs. No due date on those yet, likely be at the end of this year, around November 2025. So yeah, that's all for me today.
Okay, thank you, Sloan, for joining us today. I'll be the final to report out on things that we're doing here at Open Space. And first of all, I want to thank all the people who contributed to the really successful workforce development workshop that we hosted on June 24th. We'll even show you a video next month to be able to share kind of what that experience was. But we had Jason and Ben and Adriana and Rose. We had Fred Ufrat there, as well as essentially 15 total trainers and then 50 participants from Conservation Corps North Bay, Resilience Works, Ecological Solutions, and Circuit Rider all came to Saddle Mountain and Monin Drill to be able to practice some field treatments and prescriptions on those two properties. And then we all met for lunch and had a download about different career paths that the federal, state, and local fuel crews might be able to offer for those participants in the workshop. And then finally, we visited 4 different fuel treatments on Monin Drill to get a sense about what are the ecological factors that we want to incorporate into these treatments. So a lot of those crews are very accustomed to just given a prescription and just go do it, right? And so the idea was to try to integrate some of the key principles that we really want to teach when we're doing these types of treatments. So we heard from Carlson about the dry burn that they did, like a week before our workshop. We did, this, I was able and read up into, and it was treated by Resilient Works about 6 months ago. And what were the kind of lessons learned about how the fire went through that forest and how, what is the treatment for that particular area? We had Brock Dolman do a stellar job goalie stuffing and what are the principles that we're trying to apply there and why do types of fuel treatments. And then finally we had William Hart and Devin Friedfeld describe how prescribed grades can be an integral part to fuel treatment. So I think it was a really great exercise and action-packed and a lot of fun. So that's all I'll report out on today. And we'll go on to some of our other speakers today. So thanks very much, folks.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks everyone for participating. That was a big group effort and it went well. And now we're going to hear a little bit from Genevieve Torino, who's a forestry project manager at Sonoma RCD. And Genevieve's just going to talk a bit more about NBFIP, the North Bay Forest Improvement Program, which we've heard from a lot of folks today that you all are either assisting or in the process of working with your community members to apply for. So thanks, Genevieve, for just telling us a bit more about the program.
Great, thanks, Rose. And if you'd like, I can share my screen here.
Yeah.
Let's see. I'm hoping everyone can hear and see me okay.
Yes, looks good.
Perfect. Okay. Oh dear, not quite. All right, so North Bay Forest Improvement Program. I'm going to give you quite a quick overview of current status, the program, eligibility, all of that good stuff. I know all of you are very eager to hear about it, but just for some context, I'm coming from the Sonoma Resource Conservation District. I am a forestry project manager, and we are one of the RCDs that helps administer this program, which is run by Conservation Works. So what is North Bay Forest Improvement Program? So NBFIP is an innovative incentives program that provides public funds to support private investment in forest health and resilience projects. It's designed for private, non-industrial forest land owners in Sonoma, Mendocino, Napa, and Lake counties. And the program is funded by CAL FIRE's Wildfire Resilience and Forestry Assistance Grant. And like I said, administered by Conservation Works. I've received quite a number of questions from landowners. Is this federally funded? Are we sure these funds are secure? It is state funded. They are secure. We've had some issues in the past with our partners and funding sources, but we are good to go. We're set. So have no qualms about it. So just to go over some of the program goals, really what it is to reduce vegetative fuel loads and risk of wildfire, reduce insect infestations that often occur after these wildfire disasters, and reduce disease epidemics. And the program intent is to increase the pace, scale, and effectiveness of forest treatments in the North Bay, recognizing that the cost of work can be a huge impediment to any sort of implementation. So there are actually two types of projects that you could apply for within NBFIP. The first category is planning, and the second is implementation. Planning really just encompasses forest management planning or the development of an FMP with a registered professional forester. And that designation is important because you have to work with an RPF who is certified in order to apply for this part of the program. And NBFIP will reimburse you for part of the cost of developing a forest management plan. The other side of the coin here is implementation. And the implementation projects are really to apply on the ground activities to improving forest health. So that includes projects like small stem thinning, mastication, pruning, pile burning, and we'll go over some more of the specifics. And this program through implementation will reimburse you for some of the cost of treatment. And what's important to remember about this program, which is modeled after NRCS's EQIP and CFIP, is that it adjusts for the cost of work of implementing these activities in the North Bay, recognizing that it is a bit more expensive here than perhaps other regions of California. And onto the forest management plan. This is just the funding chart. You can see how it's broken down. Landowners can apply for either a full management plan, a mini, an existing plan revision, or an addendum. The difference is if you have a property that's less than 40 acres, you would apply for a mini management plan. Otherwise, you can apply for the full management plan. And you can see how the reimbursements work here too. Fortunately, we also have a list of registered professional foresters who are interested in working with landowners, and that is on the North Bay Forest Improvement Program's website, and you can find that there with all their contact information. On to eligibility. So like I said, this is a program designed for private, non-industrial, small forest landowners. So ownership can be between 5 and 5,000 acres, no less than 5 and no greater than 5,000. The second point here is applicants who have not already received funding through Prop 68 for forest improvements, which includes funding through CFIP since 2018. And the third is applicants who can afford the treatment after incentive payments. It's important to remember that when you're working with contractors, you will have to front that money and you will be reimbursed after the work has been completed and verified. So if after you put together your application, you realize it's just not something that is feasible for you, maybe reconsider applying or trying for another round when you can apply with your neighbors. Project eligibility, which is different than program eligibility. The project area must be at least 1 acre in size. So your ownership has to be at least 5 acres, but the project itself only has to be at least 1 acre. Eligible activities include reforestation, forest stand improvement, and follow-up fuel hazard reduction activities. And like I said, the other side of the coin is a preparation of a forest management plan by a registered professional forester. But what makes a good fit? A good fit for this program really would be an applicant who's committed to the sustainable management of their forest land. As you all know, as stewards of Sonoma County's forest land, is that it's never a one and done. It's continual management that is required. Another aspect of it is would be an applicant who would not be able to implement treatments without the financial support of the incentives program. That's important. We want to incentivize and provide public funding to people who otherwise wouldn't be able to do this work that is crucial not only to human health and safety, but for the resilience of our forest land. Someone else who'd be a good fit is somebody who's already has a forest management plan or a guiding document in place. In our ranking system for the implementation application, we rank your application much higher if you have an FMP in place. And really that's because we want to see that you have a history and a demonstrated understanding of the conditions of your property and have had a forester evaluate your property and develop some sort of prioritization schedule and understanding of what treatments need to happen where and on what timeframes. And the last thing is that an applicant who falls within a disadvantaged community or severely disadvantaged community will be scored higher. Like I said, we want to get money out to folks who can't otherwise afford these treatments. So now we're going to shift away from the forest management plans and talk solely about implementation. The first thing that you can apply for through the implementation application is professional services. So this is optional. If you would like to work with an RPF or another natural resource manager, you can apply for professional services, which has 2 rates. There's PS1 and PS2. PS1 is the rate for folks in a non-DAC or SDAC area, and PS2 is for folks who are in that area. And those designations can be found on maps online. I have a link to a few different helpful mapping resources at the end of this presentation that can help you determine whether or not your property falls within a DAC or SDAC. And oftentimes what these folks will help you with is implementation, contract administration, flagging, and compliance work. So you think about a water course that needs a buffer, anything like that, they can assist you with that on the ground. And now into actual implementation. So timber stand improvement is one of the most popular activities that people apply for, and it really spans from small stem thinning to oak woodland enhancement and restoration, forest composition adjustment, or frilling. Frilling is also what we call girdling. I'm not sure if you've heard either term, but that's what that means. Mastication of small brush and trees, and light understory removal and ladder fuel reduction. Please note, this is a common question. Timber stand improvement 1 and 2, these are for small stems. We say large stem is 4 to 8 inches DBH, And at times we'll make exceptions allowing up to 12 inches, but we're not in the business of removing your large trees and certainly not your large eucalyptus stands. We keep getting that question. I'm sorry, we don't have funding for that. The next category of treatments is brush management. So we have 1 and 2. It's light hand treatment and heavy hand treatment. You can see the pretty stark difference in between these two pictures, the before and after. A lot of that vegetation and ladder fuels have been removed. And the distinction here being, like I said, is hand treatment, whereas in other practices, it's implied that it will be mechanical or machine. So follow-up / treatment is something that you'll really tack on after you apply for a TSI, usually TSI 1 or 2, and it's a way to handle the slash that you have generated from those initial treatments. So we have pile and burn, chipping and masticating, and piling. Oftentimes, or occasionally what happens is folks will apply for pile and burn, but because contract terms are about 1 year, find out that they don't have enough time to actually burn all the piles that they have built. In that case, we can write into your contract that you don't have to burn them. If something happens, you will just be reimbursed for piling at that point. So you won't be penalized, but you just won't be paid the entire rate that you had initially applied for. Site preparation is the next one here, and this is really preparing a site for planting. And this comes before, let's see, our reforestation. And this includes planting per seedling, per tree shelter, hand planting, installation of cages, and 1-gallon pot seedlings. So it really does range of the maturity of the plant you'll be planting on your site, the number, and this oftentimes is on a per seedling base and not on an acreage basis, which is, as opposed to other practices, which are most commonly per acre. And the next one here is pruning. So pruning 50 to 100 trees per acre, or between 100 and 150 or above that. And this is just a little bit of a diagram of the appropriate way to prune a hardwood or a conifer tree. And this is just an example here of what folks have done. The hope here is not only to improve the health of the tree, but reduce some of that vertical ladder fuel connection from the ground story to the canopy. And before I move on from these implementation activities, I have to mention, and should have mentioned this earlier, is that there are 3 different rates you can apply to through the MBFIT program. So there's the 40% rate here, 60 and 80. So 80%, you're only eligible to apply to that rate if you are within a DAC or SDAC. Otherwise, you cannot apply to that. The other 2 rates are the 40 and 60. 40 is the reduced rate, so you can apply to either, but please note that if you apply to the 40% rate, your application is more attractive to us. You do score a little bit higher. That's not to say you should, cut costs and reduce your project size necessarily to make your application all that much more competitive, if that's doesn't fit your needs necessarily, but it is something to note. So the rate schedule you can see is all here, and we have a document that shows all of these practices and rates as well that you can access on our website. How do we apply? So as Adriana and other folks have mentioned, application batch is currently open and closes on July 25th. You can apply on our website, and that means you can either submit the form online or you can mail it to us. I suppose, you could mail it to the Sonoma RCD. And while it's not required to have an RPF to apply for implementation, we do recommend you reach out to somebody for assistance. Some of it can be a little bit confusing, and some of it will require mapping assistance. And if you're not familiar with GIS or other programs like that, it might be a little bit complicated. And here's just some links to the applications. And before I wrap this up, because I know I only have a few minutes, this is just the project ranking for implementation. So you can get a sense of what we're looking for when we score these applications. And let me see if I can move this. Yeah. So what we really prioritize is, has your property been substantially damaged by fire, insects, disease, or other natural causes within 36 months. We want to prioritize the lands that are in kind of more dire need of immediate assistance. And we recognize too that most of the major fires haven't happened within the last 36 months. So this is subject to change in future batching periods. We'll probably extend that to at least 5 years so that it can account for some of the more recent fires. Project will be done in conjunction with equip contract. That would also score you higher. We want you to be able to increase the acreage that you treat. And is it part of a multi-property project? We want to see that you're working with neighbors if possible. That'll score you at least 5 points higher. And not only is that beneficial to look at the landscape level and how you could be treating the whole neighborhood, but it could and probably should reduce the cost of work. Just understanding that a lot of the cost is associated with mobilization and getting the equipment on site. So if you have it on site and you just move it from neighbor to neighbor, it would significantly cut down your costs. Let's see. And to frequently ask questions. So does having an equip contract disqualify me? No. As I said, we actually encourage that and hope that you do. If you have one, we ask that you submit your application with your equip contract so we have an idea of the acres that are being treated and what other management activities are ongoing. Does my project need environmental review permits? It sure does. So all projects are required to comply with CEQA, but fortunately, the Sonoma RCD will act as the lead agency. Oftentimes, after we have done our biological surveys and archaeological record searches, what we can do is then file a notice of exemption with the county, which kind of bypasses a lot of the onerous environmental review that would have to happen with these sorts of projects. So really what we're trying to do is make it as simple as possible for y'all to get funded and to get work done. How long does it take to complete a project? So the total time takes really depends on your contractor's availability and the scope of the work that you're doing. Ideally, it would be completed one season following your application acceptance, but contracts are written for a 1-year term with the possibility of extending if there are any sort of issues that come up or, say wildfire, natural disasters that we can't quite control. And when will I receive payments for my work? And this will happen after the on-the-ground work has been verified. So once you've completed, you will notify the RCD and Conservation Works. We will go out there, look at all the project areas, take pictures, ensure that all the work has been completed to specification. And then about 3 weeks to up to 60 days after that point, you will receive a reimbursement check for that work. And here are just a whole bunch of helpful resources, and I'd be happy to share out this presentation to everybody so that you have these on hand. Please also note that this is our 7th batch right now, but we will be putting out additional application batches in the fall. We're hoping for September 21st for the next application batch, and then another spring batching period after that. So if you don't feel like you have the time or you're not prepared to apply now for the July 25th deadline, have no fear. There's another one coming up soon. But I encourage you to reach out to Jason or I as soon as you can, really, so we can start working on, developing and understanding where your treatments need to happen, whether or not you can work with neighbors, and get your mapping underway. There's also, I think it's worth noting that the program may change by the next batch in batch 8, so that we'll be adding on additional practices. It's been talked about adding grazing. So we will see how this program continues to evolve, and we absolutely love your feedback. Even if it's just the application, having trouble navigating the program, let me know. We're here to improve this program in any way you all see fit. So just let me know if you have any questions or concerns. I'd be happy to talk to you about this more. And with that, I will stop sharing. And I saw some questions come in through the comments. I'll make sure I address those. Let's see. Kelly, I see your question about Timber Cove Home Association. So the problem with Timber Cove and the coastal zone right now is we are hesitant to unwilling to really do any implementation in that area, recognizing that we'd have to go through the governor's exemption and apply for that. As I understand it right now, we're not approving projects in the coastal zone. But if it is an HOA with parcel sizes under half an acre each, that is still okay. We've worked with other HOAs. It's just really the amount of land that is owned in common under that HOA that would make you qualify.
This is for a forest management plan, not for a project.
I'm sorry, I read that incorrectly.
Okay, just wanted to reiterate. Thank you for reinforcing the project restraints in that area.
Sure. Yeah, no, so if it is under half acre, that is not a problem. That's okay.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Lynn Garrick, you say what environmental reviews must be completed? So we'll have to do a California Natural Diversity Database search, and we'll also have to do an archaeological record search. And these two things will be done by the RCD if you haven't had them done, or through the RCD and Conservation Works, if you haven't done them already. We have an archaeologist that we have contracted that will do a lot of this for us. But if it is discovered that there is a potential archaeological site that needs additional surveys, then you, the landowner, would be responsible for funding that. Fred, thank you, Fred. The reminder that large trees should be handled by a licensed timber operator or an arborist. Please do not take this on yourself, because as I think I've neglected to mention, this program allows you to do the work yourself. You do not need to hire a contractor if you do not want to. That is where it really deviates from like CFIP and EQIP as well. But you have to recognize too, if you're not used to doing this work, if you're not competent with a chainsaw, please defer to somebody else. Do not put yourself at risk. Let's see. Kelly, typically trees have to be ordered 1 year in advance. Can trees be ordered with an installation at a later date? That's a great question, and we've received that one from others as well. I believe we've decided that we would have a longer contract term for folks with reforestation projects. We also recognize right now that the forestry stock has in the area has been infected with a number of diseases and issues, so that there's just limited supply. In that case, I think we would certainly make the exception allow for a longer term. Fred, is there a place to document 2017 to 2020 fires? Would you mind? Oh, you mean in your application? Is that? There is not, but I have seen that as a flaw in our application, and we hope to address that for the next batching period. Also recognizing that people who suffered in, the 2020 fires then had subsequent pest outbreaks, and it's still not within that 36-month time frame, and it's not necessarily fair, nor is it appropriate, considering that these lands still need treatment. Lynn, you'd like to see this extended to include the 2017 Tubbs fire. I would agree. And that's something we're certainly talking about. I don't think there should necessarily be a time limit on the damage because, as we know, in Sonoma County, a lot of this work hadn't gone on for, years prior to these mega fires. So if we can still get the funding to steward your land, we'd like to do that. Let's see, Kelly, can NBFIP and EQIP applications be submitted simultaneously to obtain ranking points? How do the administrators work together to keep projects on the project schedule or remain within the 1-year NBFIP completions? So, can NBFIP and EQIP be submitted simultaneously? I don't know anyone that has done that. I don't see necessarily why not, but I don't know that you would receive those points for an EQIP contract if it's not already in place. And how do the administrators work together to keep projects on the schedule? So we hope that you'll be in regular communication with us as the project proceeds. Usually, especially if it's a multi-property project, we'll have one designee who will communicate with us. That's either a landowner themselves or your designated RPF or natural resource professional who would keep us updated with your progress. Noting also that we will check in periodically to ensure that the timeline is being met. And if you are working with EQIP as well, we would hope to have some level of communication with your TSP or whoever you're in connection with at NRCS, just to ensure that operations don't conflict and there isn't any overlapping acreage. And I see from Jason, could you explain TSI 3 in regards to historic oak preservation? Sure. So historic oak preservation, really what we're trying to do is bring back these deciduous oak woodlands. And that means dealing with some of the conifer, especially Douglas fir encroachment. It also would mean collecting acorns on site and planting them in your designated areas. So we want to ensure that you have stock that is appropriate for the site and adjusted to the conditions there. And like I said, we're focusing on deciduous oak woodlands specifically. So that's your valley blue, Oregon white oak, rather than your coast live oak, which is an evergreen. And great. Okay, so getting the signal from Rose. I guess maybe we have a question for time for one more question, if anyone has one.
Any last questions, folks?
Can I, on that question 3, TSI 3, so when you're trying to preserve the historic oak woodlands, are those funds slotted for revegetation, or is that also encompassing Douglas fir encroachment and cutting out that Douglas fir to expand oaks? Is it, see what I mean? Is it shifted towards the re-veg or the thinning and suppression?
My understanding, it's focused towards the thinning and suppression. The problem there, recognizing there's a diameter limit, and a lot of these Doug firs are much larger than 8 to 12 inches in diameter. So it is a little bit limiting, but kind of viewing it as a preparation in a way for that oak woodland reestablishment.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, for
All
sure.
right, thanks very much, Genevieve. We really appreciate you giving that excellent presentation, and thanks for joining us.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you all. And reach out if you have any questions, concerns, and I think Rose will pass along the presentation as well, so you have all those links.
That's great. Thank you. I appreciate that. All right, we have with us today Ben Nichols, the Division Chief for this region, and we're hoping to get an update on our forecast for fire this year. And can you please promise us we're not going to have any catastrophic fires?
No.
Shoot.
No, I cannot.
Yeah.
But let's jump in. So this is a presentation that has been more and more sought after over the last handful of years. And so I always feel very awkward in going to these conversations, because the running jokes over decades was that it was always going to be the worst fire season ever. Either we got too much rain and we had a great grass crop and we're going to be chasing fires, or we didn't get enough rain and everything was going to be bone dry and we're going to be chasing fires. So, but it truly is something that since 17 forward has really become apparent to us here locally, is that wind is the driving factor, right? So we could have a great winter, just like we had another above average rainfall winter this last winter. But then it's one wrong ignition on the wrong day under the wrong conditions that creates a Kincade or a Glass, or take your pick, right? So we talk about trends as we come into fire season and where we're at compared to a normal year, to kind of gauge what our risk is for the current year, but understanding that it's that one wind event that can totally upend all the great success or luck we've had for the bulk of fire season. So here we are in 2025. Those of you that have not been exposed to a purple flag yet, this is a thing. This was used in Southern California, I believe, for the first time here in California in January, and that was posted January 5th, you can see in the top right corner, Sunday, January 5th of this year. A purple flag, also known as a PDS, a particularly dangerous situation, is a polygon that you will see inserted into a red flag warning by the National Weather Service. So in our neck of the woods, there may be a red flag warning for all of Sonoma County, but we could have a PDS, that purple flag, identified in like the Mark West corridor, right? Where we have that wind tunnel and that fire history to show that in the overall red flag area, due to localized conditions with topography and that wind flow, that's a particularly dangerous situation. So, and of course, they were forecasting in the LA basin wind gusts 50 to 80 miles per hour, and in certain locations up to 100 miles per hour. Unfortunately, their prediction was right. And so we had the LA fires. This is the Palisades fire to go with the Eaton fire and a handful of other fires that were not nearly as catastrophic as those, but were burning in the LA basin during that period of time. The thing that I tried to bring locally here to our folks is that while LA was experiencing these catastrophic fires, that same night here in Sonoma County, the Hawkeye weather station that we can see with my cursor up here in the kind of the middle portion of the screen was recording winds at just before midnight, 11:56 p.m. Temperature was not amazing at 56 degrees. However, the relative humidity was at 14%. Winds sustained were at 34 miles per hour and gusting to 53 out of the northeast. So we were fortunate in the fact that we had had enough rainfall prior to this event that the fine dead fuel moistures were not as critically low as Southern California. But under these conditions, had we had an ignition, we would have had a fire here locally. Not like what they experienced in Southern California, but this is one of those things that this further articulates. Luck is not a good strategy, but we'll take it when we get it, right? So there wasn't an ignition here locally under those conditions that created an opportunity for a fire in our backyard. So that was January 7th, right? January as a whole, this is the accumulated rainfall that we received for the month of January. So Santa Rosa had 0.49 inches. Oak Ridge, I think, was at the top end at 0.99 inches. We couldn't even break over the 1 inch range. In a normal January, this is a rainmaker month for us, right? So as we got lucky on January 7th, the farther we got into January without measurable rainfall, the more critical our conditions were starting to become. Luckily, the first week of February, we made up for lost time and we got a little over 7 inches of rain in Santa Rosa. And I think the high end, as usual, Venado came in at just under 15.5 inches of rain in a 1 week's period of time. We don't want to see rainfall like that, right? So we've finished out the rainfall year at over 100% of what we would normally expect in a rainfall year, but we're getting it in fits and starts, right? So we get these deluges, the water runs off, we get potential flooding issues, and then we have these extended periods of dry, warm conditions in between these significant rain events. So what that has done is created a very impressive grass crop here in Northern California. We're above average for our tons per acre, what we would normally expect to see in a regular annual grass crop. So that grass, once it cures out, creates those control issues, right? Because we have this thatch component that not only the hose streams, but the delivery of retardant from aircraft has a harder time getting down to the bare mineral soil underneath that vegetation to be able to put in those control lines when we're chasing those fires. So the energy release component is the energy that we talk about at the flaming front of a wildland fire. So it speaks to wildland firefighters as to the burning conditions, kind of those long-term drought setups and those available forest fuels to be able to carry a fire. On this graph, if you haven't seen it before, gray, the light gray line is an average over the last, between the years of 2000 and 2022. So a 22-year period of time. That was what we would experience. Well, that was the average of what we would experience during a normal year. Blue is our current year, and red is the maximum recorded values for that period of time. When we start getting close to or above the max values, that's when we start really being anxious about what that next fire event looks like.
So, sorry, the max value is not annually reported. Those are essentially the date, August 27th is the peak point across the.
Between that period from 2000 to 2022.
Right.
Why we haven't continued to push past the 2022 mark, I'm not sure, because as you'll see here in the next slide, we actually had an above value that's now not captured in this current iteration. But and so then the background colors, that was a change that was done, I believe, last year to make it more digestible for the average user. So green is good, red is bad, and the top black line is that maximum recorded value that we've seen.
This is like our fuel load.
This is our energy release component. This is how intense we expect fires to burn based off of the fuel conditions and the climate conditions that we have today. So the items of note on this is that, so here we are. So the blue is where we're at today. And then the green is a 7-day forecast based on the anticipated weather. So you can actually see that this cool weather that we're having and continue to have is really kind of keeping a lid on our burning conditions, which again, I'll take all day, every day until it's gone. So, but the item of note on this graph, so this is the mid-coast to Mendocino area, which basically runs from the bay up to through Mendocino County. That's our local zone. So when you're looking at it on another, on our Geographic Area Coordination Center webpage, the NCO2 is our zone, the mid-coast to Mendocino. But in that, you'll notice that there's a spike. So we started the year January 1st over on the far left-hand side of the screen. By what was the end of January, we were almost at our maximum recorded values because of that lack of rain, right? So we went through the month of January without that rainfall. And so remember that during the LA fires, we were down kind of in this neck of the woods in an average year, and then that rainfall didn't show up. And so had that February storm that we see with this plunge back down to the bottom line here, if that February storm hadn't happened, we could have been continuing to climb early in the year, which is what Southern California is experiencing. So we got lucky with that February rain that came in, and then we picked up an average kind of uptick in that fire behavior as we came deeper into what is going to be peak fire season. What does this mean? So the blue line here says that in an average year, we're above where we would be, right? So I lost my mouse. There we go, cursor. Normally we use this blue line as we're coming into fire season to say, okay, so if we were, say, at this point here on the line between the orange and the light color, we would say we would basically draw a line over to where the gray line intersects. And we would say then that at that point that we were 2 weeks ahead of where we would be in a normal fire season. So we can kind of gauge what that size of potential, what that timeline of those heightened fire conditions that we have to worry about. Now that we're above that, right, we're gauging between that average year and the maximum recorded values. So comparison to last year, that's the bottom right corner there is last year's graph for how we were doing. So you can see that this time last year, we were above maximum recorded value. So as far as year over year, we're much better off this year than we were last year. the thing that the National Weather Service has talked about this year was a new one to me, which was flash droughts. And because of the lack of rainfall, a flash drought is an increased period of warmer temperatures combined with winds that basically act to create a more rapid onset of drought conditions for that local area. It's taking that available moisture out of the landscape, and in the Weather Service terms, they call it a flash drought. So again, we're better off than where we were last year, but we've got a long way to go. So, Adriana, to your ask earlier, this is the 1,000-hour fuels chart showing those heavier forest fuels and the available moisture in them. And so instead of going up when we're talking about the energy coming off of fires, we're talking about going down for that available moisture in those fuels. And so similar to what we saw on the ERC graph, the energy release component, that January period of time without that rainfall, we were diving down towards the lowest recorded values in that 2000 to 2022 span. But we got the rainfall back in February, and so we kicked back up above an average year, which was nice. And we hung out there until roughly middle of April, when then we got back down below what would be an average year. We flirted with the maximum or the lowest recorded values mid-June, but then we've had that nice change in weather and things have really cooled off. And so we actually went back up towards average, and now we're kind of floating right in between an average year and those maximum recorded values. And again, in relation to last year's deal, you can see that we were off the chart as far as those lower recorded values, and we had lots of fire season left to go. So our fuel conditions are less receptive to rapid flat fire propagation this year than they were last year. This is one of the scary ones that as the year has progressed, those drought conditions have creeped their way up the state. And they'll continue to do that, obviously, until we get rainfall. And so here locally, again, we're over 100% of our average rainfall. So we're out of those drought conditions, but it wasn't that constant rain, right? So my concern is as we get deeper into the summer, those drought conditions are going to start to impact our area. And as you can see, the LA Basin and San Diego are still in those conditions. And we've had some significant fires down there post-January just because of those drier conditions that we've got. So the National Weather Service on the 3-month temperature outlook, or the seasonal outlook, we're anticipating above average temperatures, which isn't a shocker. And then equal changes for rain, which doesn't mean anything for us, right? Because we don't normally anticipate seeing rain during the summertime. So that's not a killer for that July through August period of time. But the heat, right, is definitely something that gives us pause. So every month, our northern operations, or both northern and southern operations, produce a 4-month outlook. And so that's based on fuels and anticipated weather. And so here is what they have produced. That this report comes out the first of every month throughout the year. You can access that through our Northern Operations Geographic Area Coordination Center webpage. Be happy to provide that to anybody who's interested. But as you can see, they're saying that July through August, basically the east portion of Sonoma County across the rest of the northern state has a above normal opportunity for significant fires. With the understanding that even our area that's normal, in the July through August period of time, we anticipate at least one going larger fire during that period of time. So when we're talking about normal versus above normal, we're not saying there's not going to be fires. We're just saying that in that eastern portion of the county and across the rest of the state, we have a greater opportunity for multiple major fires rather than fire here and there as we progress. So, and as we're seeing that, well, we'll talk about that in a little bit. So then we roll into September, and then the entire northern state is at an above normal opportunity for those major fires. And then they're struggling with the long-term forecasts for October beyond, because we could get earlier precipitation that's gonna come in, or we could not. And so the models right now are really 50-50 one way or another. So they're banking on worst case scenario and hoping for the best case scenario. So here we are for this year. The screenshot on the left is something you can see if you go to our webpage. Year to date, as of today, we have had 44,000, a little over 4,000 wildfires across the state, 200,000, over 201,000 acres burned. We're familiar with the fatalities in Southern California, and 16,000 structures destroyed. Currently, the fires on the map, the little icons show you where the fire activity is happening. The Madre fire was a Forest Service incident. It's a little over 80,000 acres down in San Luis County. And the green fire is where we have our local CAL FIRE, 5 of our engines, 2 of our hand crews, and a bulldozer up assisting on that now 16 pushing 17,000 acre fire on the northeast corner of Lake Shasta. Also a Forest Service fire that was trying to come out into the state responsibility area. And then the Orleans fire is a whole fully Forest Service or federal incident at just over 10,000 acres. And then a couple other handful of fires. But if you're interested in ongoing information about fires, you can take a look there, as well as other applications.
Quick question, Ben. Obviously very impressive to see how much less acres are burning this year so far than last year. What's the reason for that? Is
Wind.
that you're on it faster?
Wind.
Wind?
So if you remember last year, ruined a perfectly good Father's Day for me. We had a point fire here in Sonoma County, and we had the Sites fire over in Colusa County that put that 20,000 acres on the table. So I can't remember what the Sites finished out at, but those 2 fires were the main culprits for that 20,000 acres burned last year.
Wow.
And so this year, 454, we just haven't had those wind driven fires, wind event driven fires. We've had some fires over in Solano County that have had a little bit of wind on them, but not that offshore wind that really creates those critical burning conditions. And with that, I'll open it up to any questions. That is okay.
Good timing. You want to stop sharing, Ben? There you go. Thank you. All right, folks. Thank you, Ben. That was an excellent presentation, as usual. And it's really interesting to see the dynamics of that world that you are so familiar with, and just how it influences our vegetation and do you feel like the treatments that are going on now in the county or in the region that you're responsible are moving towards the goals that you hope for?
Absolutely. So, some of the ones that obviously stand out in my mind are the south side and north side shaded fuel breaks out along the river. Some of the larger burns that we've done on the Cooley property and Lake Sonoma, as well as with our regional parks and state parks partners. It gives us that point to be able to anchor into during those major fires. In 2020, with the lightning fires that we had come through, it wasn't catastrophic burning conditions as a whole. It was just the volume of fires and not enough resources to go around, right? So it's these projects that you as landowners are doing, and or NGOs and communities to help provide that defense, so that once we have that fire, we have those pre-built lines, we have those pre-treated areas that give us a better opportunity to be more successful with those fire operations. The the Walbridge fire specifically in 20. You know, it used to be that CDF, before we were Cal Fire, maintained shaded fuel breaks along McCrae Ridge Road and Pool Ridge Road to basically defend Guerneville from wildfires and or be able to catch it before it came out of the Armstrong's Valley there if we had a structure into the vegetation. But when we lost Black Mountain Camp in the early 90s, we lost the ability to maintain those lines. And so had we had McCrae for Walbridge, it would have been a whole different situation, right? Because we could have taken a firing operation from Sweetwater Springs Road to McCrae, down through Bullfrog into the Gray Creek drainage and cut that fire off. But instead, the fire had an opportunity to run at Sweetwater Springs Road, slopped over Sweetwater Springs Road, and then threaten the communications infrastructure for the county on Mount Jackson, as well as the community of Rionito down below, Rionito and Hacienda, as that fire kind of crept down the hill through roll out of material and really anchored in resources to that firefight that we could have used elsewhere. And then to that point about the north side and south side shaded fuel breaks, the work that Martin Belling's done up in his neck of the woods around Lake Sonoma, those lines, hand crews have gotten less rather than more. So our partnership with California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, we have in the neighborhood of 260 crews that were authorized to build utilizing inmates from Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. But due to realignment and some of the changes in laws for incarceration, those numbers have plunged through the floor. And so we sit at about 100 crews when we have authority for 260. And that was 90s level staffing before we had our modern fires, right? So we need more crews, not less crews. And so we basically have half of the resources that we used to have in the late 80s, early 90s. And so these fuel breaks, these shaded fuel breaks that we're doing and landscape level burns that we're trying to accomplish, the idea is that during the Walbridge, there was a period of time where the Walbridge was the priority fire in the state, even though the better part of San Mateo and Santa Cruz counties were on fire, Santa Clara, I mean, fires all across the state, right? But we were the priority. So for a period of time there, we had more bulldozers than we knew what to do with, but we didn't have hand crews. And so bulldozers are great about running across topography at elevation. But when you're talking about our steep drainages in that Dry Creek Valley and Mill Creek and that remote country between Dry Creek and Cazadero, the bulldozers would get to the top of the end of the ridge, and then there was down into the drainage, and we didn't have the hand crew support to get that line completed down through those drainages. And so as Fred is unfortunately all too aware, that fire was able to continue its march to the east and to the west because we couldn't get that line put in. So it's these fuel breaks, these shaded fuel breaks and landscape level treatments that we're looking to complete with landowners so that when we're chasing those wildfires, we have lines of convenience that we can take that fire to. Anybody who's not familiar with pods, potential operational delineations, that's a thing. There's maps that show those lines that we've pre-identified that as landowners and community members, if you're looking to see where you can go with those lines, that's a starting point. And Amy lives out on a regular basis as we talk about the Bohemian corridor, because we have to use that topography to our favor. We're talking about a major fire and those resources that we're trying to staff those pods are the lines that we're looking to hold during those large fires, because we can no longer go direct because there's not the resources and the fire conditions are not allowing us to do that. So we have to find those strategic lines to be able to contain that fire.
Looks like Jason's got a question. Go ahead, Jason.
Hi, Ben. Great presentation. Just want to follow up on the trends of these high wind events, right? Because here in Sonoma, it seemed to be the tail end of the summer, the big heavy winds come in and the risk of wildfire increases. But now we're looking at, the big wind events followed by drought circumstances in January, mostly posing a bigger risk to Southern California. But just wondering if you can speak to trends in these high wind events and maybe how it correlates with available resources to suppress wildfire and, how we want to get ahead of it with doing fuel treatments, knowing that there might be this kind of concentrated high wind period at the tail end of the summer, if that is in fact still the case.
So if I understand the question correctly, historically, fire season was May, maybe June, sometimes even July through September, October, right? Our window, when I first came to work in the mid-90s, I was lucky if I worked 4 months of the summer of the year as a seasonal firefighter. To that fire threat, our firefighters now, they can only work 9 months at a shot because they're seasonal employees, and they work 9 months at a shot. So we're basically March through December, with the idea, to Jason's point, about the fact that fire season has grown longer in scale. And Senator McGuire is actually pushing a bill through the process to make our seasonal firefighters permanent, so that not only do we have year-round wildland fire protection, but we also have the available personnel outside of those wildfire events to be doing that proactive treatment that needs to be done before those fires arrive. Does that answer your question, Jason, or did I miss it?
Yeah, that's super helpful. I'm just kind of wondering if there's regularity in the trends of high gusting winds, if that's still a late summer phenomenon or if we're seeing it more regularly.
It depends, right? So normally, so fall is the easy button, right? We are all familiar with the fact that we're gonna see those offshore wind events during the fall. There's been periods of time where it's happened early in the summer and then also in the early spring. And so it's not been a consistent that we can say that that's now officially changed. And so I believe it was, well, we've had multiple fire events here locally in the greater Sonoma Lake Napa unit in February, March, April, just because we had an ignition under one of those wintertime offshore wind events. They're not as catastrophic, obviously, as our fall events, but they have happened here locally as well.
So then we heard from Brooke that they had a successful burn season at various regional parks. You were instrumental in getting a lot of fire on the ground with Fire Forward and different partners. And we kind of got that really sweet window in the end of May and June where a lot of burns were able to take place. And so do you feel satisfied that as I got two questions actually. Are you satisfied generally with how much prescribed burns we were able to accomplish? And the second question is, do you feel like that June 30th deadline was really driven by grape growers and were we able to accommodate them? Do we see more action happening in the fall?
So I didn't get the acres done that I would have liked to have burned. Our benchmark is 600 acres per battalion across the state. And here in Sonoma County, I have 4 battalions. So in a perfect world, I'm burning a minimum of 2,400 acres a year. We were, so to get those acres, we are obligated to meet CEQA requirements, right? So, we were able to, in one burn last year on the Cooley property, we were able to treat a little over 700 acres, 744 acres of land on the Cooley Ranch above Lake Sonoma, through a partnership with Northern Sonoma County Fire Protection District. That property, that 25,000 acres of property is now covered under a VTP, and we're finishing up the contracting process between the state and Northern Sonoma County Fire Protection District to have that ability to burn for them. And so it's opportunities like that that we are continuing to try to foster, that in these future forest health and or fire prevention grants on the state side. My ultimate goal is to get more land in compliance with CEQA regulations so that we Measure H, Fire Forward can do it without CEQA, but the more land that's covered under CEQA compliance, the better chance we have of bringing that meaningful landscape level treatments to the game. We were able to get Lake Sonoma. We burned half a canoe loop again for the second year in a row, and so that was a great follow-on treatment to last year's treatment. That was our largest burn that we did. That was 282, I think, was the acres-ish. It's a great burn to help protect the watershed, because ultimately the concern from Sonoma Water specifically was high intensity fires burning in and around the Lake Sonoma watershed and compromising the water source for Sonoma Marin County. Because as you're all tracking, the water that we get out of the tap here in the Santa Rosa Plain is untreated water, right? It's naturally filtered through the gravel beds out by Forestville there. And so the concern is that sedimentation into the reservoir to lose capacity and or water quality issues. So absolutely an important one. I'd love to see larger burns out in Amy's neck of the woods and or Lynn's neck of the woods, so that we've got those fires stand replacing fire, because those are obviously devastating to the environment, to the communities, and we don't want to see that, right? So I want more acres. If we were to bring a fire return rate interval of approximately 15 years, so we're burning every square foot of state responsibility area in Sonoma County, just shy of 800,000 acres, we're talking about 50 some odd thousand acres a year. At some point, there's going to be public pushback, in my opinion, about that smoke in the air. But we have to gauge on what that looks like, what that means. To me, the smoke impact for a large prescribed fire, maybe a day or two, is totally different than skies of orange for a week on end in the peak of fire season, with everything else that's burning during that catastrophic wildfire event. So definitely looking to increase that scale and utilizing the partners and friendships that we have here in the county to be able to bring those good fire acres to the county.
Okay, before we go to Amy, I wondered if you could address to what degree the wine industry impacted the length of the burn season.
So the conversations that we've had with the wine industry in the last couple of years is that veraison, the point in which the grapes begin to get color, the red varietals, not the white varietals. I've learned more about wine production in the last couple of years than I ever thought I would. The white varietals are not affected by smoke taint, because those grapes are not processed with the skins, but the red varietals are. And so their concern is that once that grape begins to change color, which here locally has been identified as July 1st, then their crop is at risk. And so There has been a ongoing conversation about their needs versus our needs and how we make those two match in the middle. And it's, you know, obviously a significant crop here in Sonoma County and people's livelihoods. And so we're trying our best to work within that window. This year, I was aware of like a very small burn that we did on Jack London, the Mays Flat burn, where a vintner right next to that burn or a wine grower right next to that burn was concerned, but that's the only instance I heard of concerns from the wine industry.
And do you anticipate going back to prescribe for fires after the harvest?
Yes,
Okay.
but so that's the tricky deal, and that's where we as fire practitioners have really tried to be nimble and not get hung up on tradition, right?
Right.
In that historically, the bulk of prescribed burning was done in the fall, just before the rain. So that one, the dead forest fuels were the most likely to be completely consumed, and then the rain would roll in right behind it and put it out. Unfortunately, in the modern times, we're now dealing with these offshore wind events that, as fire practitioners, when we're talking about a large wildfire, a large prescribed fire footprint, especially in a coastal stand like out in Amy's neck of the woods, if we have one stump that's still burning down a week or two after that successful prescribed burn was conducted, and we have a critical offshore wind event, and we have a wildfire that originates from that, that's gonna put an extreme lid on any future burning because of that impact to lives and property.
Yeah.
So where it's not as optimum for the consumption that we're looking for and obviously the downstream effects of that fire, to me, perfect is the enemy of good, right? And so it's pushing us to try to get more burns done in the early part of the summer.
Yeah.
Rather than the late part, because a combination of the fall harvest as well as wind events, and then whatever winter we get, we've run into a window where basically the window between harvest and fuel conditions becoming too moist to effectively burn was like a week. And so we've found it a couple times out on the Annandale State Park, what we call the Pig Flat Burn up against the Bennett Ridge subdivision, that we've missed our window twice, that we get just enough rainfall that grass that's carrying that fire through the bulk of that burn unit gets just enough greened up that we lose our window to effectively take fire through that area.
Great. All right, thank you. I appreciate that. Amy, so thanks for your patience.
Thank you. So this is really for you, Kim, and you, Ben. I think everybody across this meeting and across our county struggle with CEQA for almost every project and grant that we do. And I know that the Cal VTP is supposed to help expedite that, but I would love to see some regional Cal VTPs implemented from you at your level, not from us trying to implement it at our level. But I know the RCD has been attempting to do that, and funding was in and out for them. But it's really critical that we have some of this work pre-done and that we can work underneath it. A lot of us are not experts in that capacity, and we need your technical assistance. And we also need it by region, like the Cal VTP for the Bohemian Collaborative from the Russian River down to Freestone is a very different one than the one in Sebastopol, let's say, or certainly in Santa Rosa and East. But it would be lovely if we could break, the pods that you have, Ben, into some regions and have California, CAL FIRE and the county doing these VTPs and funding them and getting them done. So that's my ask.
So I can speak on behalf of the county. We were pretty successful in accomplishing a number of different BTPs through the Vegetation Management Grant Program and funding those to get those accomplished. And then we've seen some excellent progress through regional parks and being able to do some significant BTPs. I think the rule changed a little bit in the scope of some of those BTPs, whereas we were very project specific in the first couple of years that we were running the program. Now we're going to larger scale. I think Marshall is one that kind of advocated for taking larger blocks, and we got some great BTPs up around the northern Yakima and seeing the Geyserville BTP and the northern Geyserville. So some significant acreage up that way. The National Fish and Wildlife Grant Program helped fund the West County BTP, which was about, I think, 42,000 acres in your area. So I think we're getting the message, and we're trying to get more BTPs on the ground at scale. The community organizations like yourselves should not be doing, they can't do the lead on CEQA. And you're right, there is an opportunity for different partners. The RCDs are excellent at providing that expertise and guidance. But I think we are starting to do a better job on trying to accomplish more area under BTPs so the treatments can qualify for grants. I think that's a huge advance. But yeah, Ben, maybe you have some other thoughts on that.
So the answer you probably won't like, Amy, is we are doing the VTPs because we're giving the grant money to do those VTPs. As Fred can attest to, and any of our RPFs that are in the crowd, Jill is on there, and I don't see Matt today, but what we're struggling with is the fact that there's not enough foresters in the state, and those that are in the state are working for private industry, not the state. And so we have been short multiple foresters in our unit for years at this point. And so we just can't get foresters to come to work for us. So I would love for CAL FIRE to be the lead, and I would love for us to do all these. I just don't have the personnel to do it. And so you bring up a good point, and I'll bring it up to Chief Wink, is that maybe the agency, to your ask about, I know that you've been frustrated over the years about, where do we go and what do we do? Maybe we pull back some of those grant funds and push that directly towards CAL FIRE specific priorities rather than going through community-based approach. But the whole idea, right, is that I mentioned it earlier, that if you win, we win. This is absolutely one of those things that you've lived it more so than probably anybody else in the crowd, is that landowner permissions, landowners buy into the project. So some of the things that NGOs and the county and the state have all struggled with over the years is that we can have all the great ideas in the world, but if we don't have landowner buy-in, then it doesn't buy us anything. So that's where groups and communities like yourself building that local motivation and support behind a project, and then working with us to flesh that out to most effectively meet your goals and our goals is probably the best recipe for success moving forward.
We'll keep doing that. It would just be nice to have a strategic effort and funding towards that VTP so that the county is covered and these projects don't constantly have to struggle with that piece of it.
Well, and so that was something that the Sonoma Valley Wildlands Collaborative group struggled with, man, what was that, back in 17 or 18, that in a perfect world, you're absolutely right. The county as a whole, from coast to the Yakimas, would be covered under CEQA compliance. it's not reality, that you're talking millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars to affect that survey work that needs to be done. That the misnomer or the feel good about the VTP is that the initial lift for the desktop survey puts it on the board and recognizes that area to be treated, but then it's got to be followed up with the actual cultural and biological surveys. And so that's the piece of the puzzle that really is the biggest Achilles heel. So, you know, we just saw a tweak in the CEQA rules for infill and other things that the powers that be have decided that we don't need to be as restrictive on. So to me, I've said it for years now, and I'll say it again, that, you know, when it comes to prescribed fire, I think there's probably some things that can be looked at as far as how are we making things more difficult than they need to be. So to my feeling is that as long as we're not doing ground disturbance with, say, a bulldozer or mastication or hand line construction, do we need to do the aggressive survey work that's being done in the interior of a 5,000 acre burn? I don't know. I'm not that person, but that's part of the puzzle, is that, you know, rather than continuing to try to figure out how to make the current system work, is there a better, more efficient way that we need to look at as a collective whole?
Thank you.
And I didn't mention that Permit Sonoma has really done a pretty amazing job on trying to get the brick areas under compliance. And so that is one of the success stories of the brick funding that phase one, to be able to at least get that environmental review completed. So we do have a significant blobs around the county, if you will, where we can do treatments. Now it's a matter of defining the projects, doing the on-site surveys, the bio and the cultural, but we're closer to that. We can get funding according to the wildfire prevention program or grant program that CAL FIRE manages, where we can attract other funding sources by using those successes so far. I think I'd like to thank Ben for that great presentation and all the questions that folks asked. Can I get a round of applause for? Thank you, Dan, really appreciate it. Next, we'd like to talk about the upcoming meetings we have. Next, in August 21st is our next meeting. It's gonna focus on funding applications. And so one of the things we found is that we get really good attendance when we talk about funding. So we thought, okay, let's keep with that mode. So, but we thought it'd be interesting because all of us are going, you know, just cranking away at the MB-FIP applications. We have the wildfire prevention grant coming up. And so this is really to review what people have applied for. So come ready to be able to share what you've been able to accomplish this month, kind of a critical time to apply. But also just to get good projects on everybody's radar. So we're not just kind of working on our own little pool, but we're actually understanding what other people are doing, and we have a better sense of collectively how we're approaching these issues. And then in September, we're gonna have our annual picnic, and it's gonna be hosted out at Rancho Mark West in Lynn's neighborhood. Where we'll have a feast and a chance to get together. We had a really great time last year, thanks to Fred and his son-in-law, I believe it is, that we're cooking up some great food. And it was a great tour by Brooke to be able to show us what Riverfront Park is all about. So we will do something similar at Rancho Mark West, where there'll be a little opportunity to learn about some of the interesting practices that have been applied there. But also, more than anything, it's just an opportunity to get together and share some food together. And that's kind of what we do. So we hope you guys can make it in September. That would be September 18th. So with that.
Oh, we actually did have a question. I don't know if we're ready to talk about it now, but we were thinking about doing our normal time, September 16, 17, what did you say on Thursday? But we were also open to seeing about doing it on the weekend if that was better for people. So I had a note that maybe we should ask, kind of poll the audience what people are more interested in, like a Sunday picnic or a Thursday picnic.
Right, we got some good feedback, at the last, meeting that, Adriana and Rose hosted. Asking, well, a lot of these things are happening in the middle of the week and a lot of foresters can't attend that because they're busy on the job. So, we wanted to just kind of get some feedback from you all. Maybe you can send Rose a note, via email, saying what would you prefer, a Thursday, type of event or a Saturday? Just say, or Saturday or Sunday, I guess. And we are amenable to doing either or, but not both. All right. Good. Any other comments or questions that people have?
No, thank you again.
Hearing none, thank you folks. Thank you for attending online and definitely come next time. There's lots of good food here and good company. All right,
Good to
folks,
see you.
thanks for
Bye.
joining us. All right, take care. Thanks, man.
Thank you.